All right, we are live. Thank you for joining the stream. It's the eSports Guru Call of Duty Talk Show. We do this every week, Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 8:30. I'm here today with probably Phil. He's from the UK. We're going to talk about the Call of Duty World League. The first week of the Call of Duty World League occurred this week, just ending yesterday. Thanks for joining me, Phil.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here. Finally,
Yeah.
been trying to get on for a bit. But yeah, I'm just happy to talk about the league. Really, I haven't had much outlet for my thoughts so far, so I'm ready to rant.
Okay, I'll let you rant, but it is a week late. So we were supposed to be discussing the first week of the Call of Duty World League last week, but it got delayed, which was a good call because they were having PSN issues, so nobody could really connect to the internet anyway. So it was kind of like a snow day for the Call of Duty World League players because the Activision canceled the first day of the matches about 6 hours before they were supposed to begin. So it was a week postponed. And so the way the schedule works is they're going to have 2 matches every week played on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And basically, since we have 3 leagues around the world, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and North America, the Call of Duty World League stream is going on non-stop for those the entirety of those 2 days. So basically, Call of Duty esports fans, you can tune into the twitch.tv/Call of Duty and catch Pro League matches constantly on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So we're going to start with talking about a little bit about Australia. Those are the first matches to be played. And the first scheduled match was actually against Team Orbit. They have a team in Australia after they weren't able to qualify in Europe or North America. They picked up an Australian team. They were scheduled to play against Mindfreak. Mindfreak is widely regarded to be the best Australian Call of Duty team. And so that first match, a lot of people were hyped because it was the very first Call of Duty World League match. However, it was a forfeit because Mindfreak didn't have 3 players available to play. So, they couldn't play with only 3. They made the decision to forfeit the match. I don't know if you heard about that, Phil, but I had a little bit of the inside scoop because I'm in a chat with the Australian players from Orbit, and I think Mindfreak came out with something about the guy having a migraine, something like that. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did see that on Twitter. It's strange though because I know that they are allowed a substitute. I saw from some people that possibly they hadn't added a substitute for their roster for some reason. So yeah, it was a bit of a strange start to the league really for the first ever Call of Duty World League game just being a forfeit. Especially
with some of the best players known in that region, being the ones to forfeit. You'd expect, maybe somebody without the experience at the high level to not show up. But what I actually heard, this is just a rumor, but he was asleep. I mean, I don't know. Gamers have some pretty weird sleep schedules, but it seems kind of late in the day, 4 p.m. in Australian time. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's not a good way to start it out.
That's the gamer lifestyle.
Yeah.
I definitely know a few people who've had that sort of sleeping pattern. So I wouldn't put it past them, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's the exact opposite of what normal people do. But unfortunately for Mindfreak, they started out 0-1. But they did win their second match. I got to pull up the scores to see who exactly they played against. I think. Do you happen to know who it was?
I will find out for you right now. Who Mindfreak plays? They played Chiefs.
Oh,
who are I think they're like the second best team, right?
Yeah, Chiefs came into the Call of Duty World League kind of.
Well, that's what people thought. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had them on our power rankings ranked #1, and the reason was because during the Call of Duty World League qualifiers, the Chiefs actually beat Mindfreak.
Yeah, they were Skyfire at the point, right?
They were called Skyfire at that point.
Yeah.
And right before the league started, they were bought out by the Chiefs, which I guess is a popular organization in Australia.
Yeah, I've seen them out on League of Legends. I know they had a team in kind of like the rest of the world qualifier for the World Champs, I think, in League of Legends, or at least they were definitely playing in the Australian Pro League.
Probably, yeah.
So yeah, it's a reasonably big roster, big organisation, and it's nice to see them actually going into probably more of those PC-based organisations coming into the league. Obviously, we've seen it in NA, so it's nice to see that in Australia as well.
Yeah, Australia had a couple of teams get picked up by, I guess you could call them international organizations. Apotheon, I mean, they were kind of new. They started out in North America. Their second team was the Australian team, and I guess that's their only team that I can think of at the moment.
Yeah, I guess it's a similar situation for Apotheon as it is with Orbit, where there's obviously Apotheon did qualify, but they ended up losing their team.
Well, they sold it, so I mean that's a win for them.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, but they sold it. But my understanding was the team wanted to leave, and they were kind of almost strong-armed into selling the team because the team were being uncooperative, basically.
Yeah, actually, I wrote an article about that, the Twitter drama of Apotheon eSports. And at the time, everybody thought it was going to be TSM to pick them up.
Yeah.
But they're not here yet, so I don't know.
No, they're not. I can't see them picking up Team Question Mark. I know that's what everyone thinks, but I just don't think that Team Question. I think that Team Question Mark team might just be relegated. To be honest, I think they're reasonably good, but they got dismantled by Rise, didn't they? Oh, then again, they did beat Elevate, so okay, maybe I'm talking rubbish then.
Well, the Elevate match though, that was a forfeit.
Was it?
I believe if that was the first match. The Elevate match, yeah, because Elevate played Optic yesterday, and I'm on the website now because I need to see these scoreboards if they have them. Okay, yeah, they do have them. The match between Elevate and Question Mark. Okay, it was a 3-1. So Elevate at some point, one of their players disconnected and they couldn't reconnect.
Oh, okay.
And unfortunately for them, it's a terrible way to start your series too. I mean, Mindfreak forfeiting, Elevate forfeiting, but
well, then my point stands. Then I think Question Mark will be probably relegated, or at least they'll be in that relegation. But they won't be in. I don't think they'll be in the playoff spots. And I can't see TSM wanting to dilute their brand with a team that's kind of struggling in a tier 2 esport. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because obviously we have to understand that Call of Duty is not at the highest level at the moment in terms of esports. We're still not at the level of CSGO, League of Legends, Dota, those sort of caliber of esports. So I think if not, that's why I was surprised when CLG came in with that team. I mean, it's a reasonable team. They're not horrible in any way, but
I mean, they qualified online.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I just feel like obviously I don't know what happens behind the scenes in those organisations. They might see the added value to a higher level than us, but it just would seem strange for TSM to come in for that team because TSM, they're a bigger brand than CLG because obviously TSM have had success now in CSGO as well. In League of Legends, they were like traditionally rivals, obviously with CLG, but I think TSM have always been the bigger brand. So it'd be surprising to me if they did pick up Team Question Mark, but that's where all the rumours have been, I know, and that's what I've heard behind the scenes and everything. But it seems strange that if it was TSM and what people were implying was that it was kind of wrapped up before they even did the online quals. Like it was basically if they qualified, they were going straight to TSM.
Yeah.
But it seems strange if that was the case that that hasn't been announced yet.
Yeah, and it's actually 2 games in.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Obviously, that's what we've heard, TSM, but
we've also heard Team Liquid.
Liquid, yeah. I think Liquid would make more sense.
Do you think that they would pick up the NA team, or do you think they would go for an EU team, Team Liquid?
No, I think they're good for NA. Well, I don't think there's not many EU teams on the table anymore.
Yeah.
That are like
TCM came back.
Yeah, TCM are back. I'll probably touch on that later when we talk about EU, where I actually know what I'm talking about. But yeah, no, I think Liquid makes more sense to me to come in. It would be obviously be great for TSM to come in. They're a huge organisation and they could easily cross-pollinate from the other sort of esports fans they've got. But
I mean, there's been a couple of big organizations coming in Call of Duty this year, and it's funny because a few of them are in the Call of Duty World League, but none of them are really holding what would be considered the best rosters. Like they're not holding the top 3 spots.
That's kind of the price they're paying for being sort of late adopters.
Yeah.
Because obviously what we see is basically the organisations that have been in the scene for a reasonable amount of time, they're the early adopters, essentially. And they have they know the lay of the land, they know how to make the moves, and also they've got those teams already contracted before the COD World League was even announced. So they've got that advantage. So they basically have to brute force their way in, the PC orgs, with the sort of lower tier teams, it seems, unless they're willing to put up the massive bucks to buy out sort of COD organisations teams. So yeah, at the moment I think obviously H2K coming in with a reasonable team, the ex-Apotheon team. But again, we've seen a similar thing on, like you said, on the EU side, where TCM coming back into the scene, but not with like a super top tier team.
Yeah.
And LDLC coming in. Obviously, they had some success with CS:GO back in the day with the what is now the Envy roster in CS:GO, and they won some various championships.
Okay.
And LDLC have now picked up Spartan in Europe, which they're probably the second best French team, possibly the first. So
Well,
yeah,
currently winless, I believe.
they are winless, but I'll talk about it later. But they did have difficult games, so I'm not sure if we can judge it. And I think that's true of all the leagues at the moment. You can't really judge it off week one because
It's hard.
some of the teams have had hard games.
Yeah. Okay, so we covered the entire world actually, but we were starting with Australia. So we talked a little bit about Mindfreak forfeiting to Orbit. There are 2 undefeated teams currently now in Australia. Out of the 8 teams there, there's Orbit. Orbit is 2-0 after getting a forfeit win, and then they defeated Team Immunity, which apparently was an upset. A lot of people thought that Immunity would take that, and Orbit actually shut them out 3-0.
Yeah.
And then the second match was, or the second undefeated team is Tainted Minds, and I think they're a pretty strong roster. They played Exile 5, first match shut them out, and the second match they played against Platronics Envy. And I believe I've always considered that Platronics Envy roster to be pretty decent. They're kind of a mid-tier Australian New Zealand team. They've always been pretty relevant to players on that squad. And I'm looking at the score sheets right now, and one thing that's really standing out to me right now, out of the 8 games played in Australia so far, they've all been shutouts. All of them have been 3-0s.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of.
I'd just like to obviously talk about as well. Obviously, like you said, Tainted Minds. What was it? Trident T1 Dotters that some of the players are on there that we saw go across and do well in the COD champs.
Yep.
And it's not surprising to see them 2-0. I think it's them, Mindfreak, and Chiefs, who I think most people thought were kind of near the top, alongside maybe Immunity and Envy.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's massively shocking to see Tainted Minds at the top at the moment, but
yeah, I think they're definitely doing very well. They're definitely get 2 good wins.
Yeah, and the fact that I tuned into the Australian stream like early morning on Tuesday.
Okay.
And I was interested to see what. And the first game I watch, I just see Rejack being pulled out. I can't remember which play it was, and I just thought, is this going to be the status quo for the rest of the league?
Well, I saw somebody. I think I saw some EU players using Rejack as well.
Yeah, there was one game that happened.
Was it the Epsilon match the first day?
It was Epsilon versus LDLC, and that was a bit of a weird one. That's the only time we saw it, and it was a bit of a. What happened was, in the first map, the hard point, LDLC played it so they could have rapid fire Shivas.
Uh-huh.
And Epsilon were a bit unhappy about that because they sort of considered that slightly not ideal to play against. They basically they thought there'd be an agreement that you wouldn't play with that. Essentially, obviously, all the players have signed contracts that say that they're not allowed to make these agreements.
Yeah.
That hasn't stopped them happening. I think it's fair to say.
It's kind of like an unspoken agreement. I mean, you don't really need to talk about it. It's just kind of known at this point. And
it's been quite funny actually. The commentators on the stream sort of like dancing around the subject, sort of not wanting to say anything about it. That when it does get pulled out, in terms of why it's weird, and talk about the agreements, and just sort of, it's quite funny.
I've seen the stream, and it's very the stream chat. And there were definitely a lot of people who were like, why are they using shock charges? Why are they using Rejack?
Yeah.
Good question.
But what happened essentially was they pulled out the rapid fire Shivas, and then they played probably the first 50 or 100 points of the hard point. Mm-hmm. And then Rated, I think it was, from Epsilon, whacked out an LMG, and it was just a race to the bottom after that. It just got completely dirty after that, and then the maps that came after were just complete LMG fests. Everything was a go. Rejack, shock charges, trip mines, you name it really. And LDLC did manage to take an uplink, which was quite interesting actually. But I think that LDLC team are good though. because the thing is, they've got Tony JS, and I don't know if any of the NA COD fans are really aware of Tony JS because he hasn't really done anything on the global stage.
Yeah.
I don't even think he's been to an NA event, but we
I don't
saw
know the
him
game
at.
personally that well.
No, exactly. He was on Hyper Games, which you might know sort of vaguely about Hyper Games. They were in the GFIN Pro League, and they're around as kind of like a again like probably the second best French roster. At times they look better than Millennium, to be honest, on Advanced Warfare. But Tony JS, at least for me, was the standout player on that team, using an AR, and he could hang with sort of the best in Europe easily. He was on the same tier as those really top tier UK players, sort of dropping serious numbers pretty consistently. And Tony JS is on that LDLC roster, and I feel like he's probably the star factor on that roster. And although they did go 0-2, I think their games were against, obviously the game against Epsilon. I think the other game was Infused. So again, like two really difficult games to start off, Infused and Epsilon. I think most people would rank Infused and Epsilon within their top 3 for the league, maybe top 4, but definitely both in the top 4. And LDLC, I think they could still potentially challenge for a playoff spot, top 6. I think they're a reasonably strong French team, although Vitality, the other sort of strong French team in the league.
Of the two, you'd probably say.
The thing is, coming into it, I wasn't that sure, to be honest, because Vitality, for me at least, had been quite disappointing. And I don't know if you knew, but LDLC had beaten Vitality 3-0 in the qualifiers online.
No, I didn't know that.
No, so in the online qualifiers, because I don't know if you're aware as well, the way it worked was it got to top 8 in the online qualifiers, and then if you lost at the top 8 position, so that would be quarterfinals, then you got put into a double elim bracket, a small double elim bracket, like a GSL style group.
Yeah.
So obviously Vitality lost in that round of 8 against LDLC 3-0, so like quite convincingly. But then obviously they managed to fight their way back. They beat Nalgef's Bran, and they beat, I think, like Spirit Gaming or someone. Nightmare. But anyway, Vitality did manage to get into the league just about. But again, as well, they've just looked a bit rocky at the first LAN, which is Amps Pro 3. They got top 6, which was not that impressive because not all the top teams were there. Epsilon were not there.
Yeah.
The current Splice roster were not there. So, I mean, it was quite a disappointing performance. They lost 3-1 to XL. They lost to Infused quite convincingly. So, I mean, Vitality, for my money, did not seem like massively strong coming into the league. But, I mean, it was a massive shock on the first day. Millennium versus Vitality. Vitality actually taking that was...
And it was a shutout, apparently, too. It was 3-0.
It was, but I think we have to...
Yeah.
have to mention that it was a default win for them on the S&D before any rounds were played.
Oh, was that the match where the bomb timer was off or something?
Round timer for that game, but there was another game where that bomb timer, that was the XL's the Splice TCM game. Sorry, but yeah, no, the Millennium.
So many forfeits.
Yeah, I know. It's the nature of online Call of Duty, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
but apparently though, it's been the admins that have been enforcing it though, rather than the players wanting to enforce that.
Yeah, I mean, well, they gotta. First of all, the players by now, they played so many times, right? Like, how do they not have the rule sets just saved?
I know. Well, the thing is, they were playing on new accounts, so they didn't have saved rule sets.
Okay.
not to excuse them too much. It's still a silly mistake to make, but they were playing on new accounts, so kind of got to let it go a bit. But yeah, Vitality. I don't know if you watched that game at all.
Which Vitality Millennium or
Vitality Millennium? Yeah.
I think I might have had to miss that one.
Well, what happened was it basically started out how everyone expected. Millennium coming out really, really strong, and then Tommy actually got wraps within the first 3 minutes of the game.
Yep.
And then as soon as he got wraps, it seemed to slip. So I think someone took screenshots of when Tommy called in his wraps, and when they ended, and in that time, Vitality pulled back 80 points.
Wow.
It was absolutely ridiculous. Like, you kind of think as soon as someone's kind of gone off in the first bit of the game and they've called in wraps at that point,
it should
it's
be
just it. You just
closed.
think it's GG, really. You can go off and have a drink and come back for the next map.
Yeah.
But no, somehow Vitality managed to make a massive comeback. Riskin especially was really, really impressive. Riskin for me as well at the offline qualifiers was really, really impressive. Also ex-Hyper Games back on Advanced Warfare, but really impressive. And then the uplink it wasn't a blowout, but it was convincing for Vitality. And yeah, they managed to take that game off Millennium. Which I think
that's impressive because the match that I did see Millennium, I thought they looked really strong. When they played TCM the second day.
Yeah, so I guess it's worth touching on TCM as well. Obviously, a big name coming back into the scene after leaving.
Yeah.
They kind of implied that they might be back. They said they were taking a hiatus. Obviously, after I probably would say an unsuccessful sort of voyage over to North America.
Here's how their voyage to North America went. They came over with 4 Europeans, and they went home with like 1 still on the roster. And slowly, the Americans dripped into the roster.
The thing is, I feel like it could have sort of picked up after Mad Cat came in and they won those string of league games, and they got to X Games and they did kind of get destroyed. But then they dropped Mad Cat after that, and Mad Cat is a bit of a spiky personality to get along with in a team, as far as I know, or at least he was. Maybe not anymore. Maybe he's kind of tamed himself, but
he's a good player.
Yeah, but he ended up getting dropped, and I think everyone said at that X Games event that he was probably their best player. But anyway, yeah, that's a bit of a tangent. TCM obviously coming back in, and Nalgeth Brand did qualify, and again, like names that people don't really know much about. We've seen Geth being subbed out for Shane,
and Shane was kind of like a TCM staple, I guess, in the past.
Yeah, it was Shane. They basically built the team around Shane.
Yeah.
In Advanced Warfare, obviously, in the end, he did end up leaving, but. Yeah, Shane is staple TCM, and I have to feel like that's the reason they picked up that roster in the end, the subbing out of Geth. But it's a good team, and they didn't get blown out by Millennium as much as I thought, to be honest. They looked competitive at times, which is a good sign. I think it might not look as good because obviously Millennium did lose to Vitality before. I think Millennium can't be underestimated. I think they're probably still favourites to take the league, or they're definitely still going to get top 2, I think.
I would put them, I don't know top 2, but I would put them pretty high on our rankings. I think
Millennium.
Millennium.
Yeah, no, Millennium are still top. Millennium, I think you still got to put them top 2. They had a shaky game against Vitality, but you got to think they lost the S&D by default. Could it have gone differently? Sort of. It's a bit of a momentum killer, really.
Yeah. I mean, the way you said the hard point went down. I guess that would be that in itself is a momentum killer. If you get wraps and you lose hardpoint, I don't know how that's even possible, honestly.
And the thing is, we've seen that from Millennium before, actually, on hardpoints. There's the game Amta Pro 3 back in late November, where we saw. I guess you probably didn't see this because it wasn't really a well-viewed event. I was casting it. That's probably why. But
I tuned in a little bit.
We saw Millennium versus Infused in that winner bracket final. So quite a big game, and obviously that's become a bit of a rivalry now. But
that's good. I think that Call of Duty needs more rivalries, that for sure.
Yeah, it's been pretty insane, to be honest. The Millennium Infused saga, which probably I guess most NA people don't know because they've basically been at smallish events. But anyway, Millennium I think they had like 100-point or 150-point lead in that hardpoint game, absolutely destroying Infused, and Infused managed to make an absolutely colossal comeback on them.
I mean,
and they lost
huge. Yeah.
And they lost that hardpoint, and then they lost that series. They did end up winning the event anyway. But they just lost the series. They got comebacks on a hard point and the series was lost, and it was strange. Jerd actually dropped 50 on that game, still lost. That was an interesting one, yeah. But anyway, yeah, Millennium, I still feel like they're a really top contender, and also got to think that even if they do fail to place in the online segment of the league in that kind of like top 2 bracket, which I still think is unlikely, I still feel like they're probably favourites to take the league on LAN. But yeah, it was disappointing though.
Who would you say are your weakest teams then in Europe?
Pulse is the weakest by far. And
they're the last. Are they?
On my power rankings, I put them last, and they went they went 0-6 in the first week.
Yeah.
They
So
didn't win a
they
map.
did play Vitality and Excel.
XL, they got absolutely dominated by XL. It was actually ridiculous. They got 100-point clubbed on the hard point. Not that surprising. 6-0 on S&D, and then like a complete blowout on uplink. So like it wasn't even remotely close. Absolutely destroyed. I didn't even bother watching the Vitality game after the first map because I just knew they were going to get destroyed.
What about
Pulse of the West.
Giants Gaming? Would you think it's fair to give them a hard time? And they played Infused and they played Epsilon first 2 matches.
Yeah, that's the thing. They had a really, really hard first week. I think Giants are reasonably good, to be honest. I don't think they're probably top 6, but I think they're a challenge for teams, and I think they could pull a few upsets. They had a roster change after the offline qualifiers, which they looked all right at times there, but I think it's fair to say they were probably the worst team at the offlines. But they switched out 2 players they brought in 2 sort of veterans of the scene. I think it's Methods and Legend that came in. Don't quote me on that one. And then they beat Orbit UK online, which was a big shock. I think it's fair to say. But yeah, they in the games this week did not look that good. But I would definitely put them above Pulse. And I think like against the likes of LDLC, Splice, TCM, maybe they've got a shot.
Yeah.
I think time will tell, really. It's hard to judge it. Like you say, they had a really, really hard first week in terms of the game. So I think it's hard to judge at the moment. I mean, Splice is the interesting one for me, to be honest, in the league, because I don't know if you saw on Twitter and everything, all the drama that was happening with Reedy.
So he left Splice, joined Epsilon, and that was something that you called, I remember, last week.
Well, it was even more confusing. Okay, basically, Reedy wanted to snake away from Splice.
Yeah.
Because of the Splice logo. And he wanted to leave, basically, and then Splice were stopping him, essentially.
Yeah.
So then he got benched on Splice due to basically not wanting to play with the team. So he was benched. He was the substitute on the Splice roster, and they brought in Vortex, who played with Orbit for the qualifiers. They obviously failed to qualify, but he's a good player, and he looked really good in Advanced Warfare, so it was a fair enough pickup. And then what happened was Epsilon were left high and dry, essentially. They were sort of struggling to find a player, and they picked up Hawkeye, who for the last 2 games has been probably one of the best players in Europe at times, but he has been under 18 until quite recently. Okay. He played on a roster called Checkmate in Ghosts and really, really broke through there, kind of from being a complete unknown. And then he played on Barrage in Advanced Warfare. They beat Vitality at the big Amateur Pro event with 70+ teams, who was like that Vitality team with Watson, Madcat, Josh. You know what I mean? Like big names.
Yeah, I remember Barrage being a pretty good team. Yeah,
that Barrage team are good, and some of their players are still floating around, and I think we might see them in the league going forward, especially Dave. It's one of my sort of picks to go forward. But anyway, carrying on, get there eventually. So Epsilon picked up Hawkeye as kind of a last-minute pickup.
Yeah.
So we kind of thought it was all said and done. Reedy was benched. He wasn't playing in the league, and that was it. And then we just see on Twitter that Dominate got dropped, and what happened was Epsilon and Splice then traded players. So Splice got Hawkeye and Epsilon got Reedy. So in the end, Reedy did get to go to Epsilon after all that drama. We got the roster, which I think most people expected, but it wasn't without its problems. Dominate kind of got screwed, to be honest.
Kind of out of nowhere.
I don't think he'd be too happy about that. And it seemed like he wasn't really aware of that being a possibility until kind of right at the last minute, and he was obviously not happy about it, which is fair enough considering he qualified.
So he kind of got dropped, but he's sitting on as a substitute probably with Splice?
Yeah, he probably is, technically. Although, if he wants to qualify for the league, I'm not sure if he can then, he'd have to leave as a sub. I'm not exactly sure how the rules.
Time around? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and if he wants to play on another team for the Challenger events, I'm not sure.
So, okay. Well, we'll have to touch on that, because I don't know anything about the Challenger series yet. The Challenger.
nothing announced for Europe, but obviously
Yeah.
you saw the NA announced UMG running it.
Yeah, well, there's
Uh,
one event. That's all they've announced.
yeah, yeah, and that should be interesting because I think that's going to dictate who gets to play in the relegations, right? Whoever has the most challenger points, like whichever 4 rosters have the most challenger points, I think play in the relegations. Now they haven't really announced that, and that's just my logical sort of deduction from how I think it's probably going to work out.
Well, it's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that seems pretty interesting because okay, so the challenger challenge division, right? There should be one in Australia, there should be one in Europe, and there should be one in North America. And really, the only event that's been announced, or the only news whatsoever that's been announced for it, is this one UMG event, which is still 1 entire month away. So it's actually February 12th.
I wouldn't be surprised if there is only one challenge event for each region, for each stage.
From that one event, you're saying that the top 4 teams are not.
I mean, we never know, but I wouldn't be that surprised if we look at the fact that not one's been announced in Europe at the moment, and the stage finishes in April.
Yeah. So who do you think in Europe would be hosting it when they do it?
It's going to be EGL or Gfinity. It has to be, I think.
Yeah,
I would say. The thing is, I would say Gfinity, but because of their relationship with MLG, and if it's ESL deciding who has it, I feel like they'd be more comfortable working with EGL.
Well, I don't know, because Gfinity have they have their own arena and everything. They have their
arena. Yeah, but the thing is, that's not catered to hold big events.
Yeah, it's true.
When they did their GFin Open, they hired a hotel for the first day, and then they moved it to their arena for the second day when there were fewer teams.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that arena isn't really an advantage for Gfinity if we're talking about these challenger events. Obviously, it is still nice to have that staging for the latter periods in the game, in the tournament, but you can't really run a big open event out of the arena because there's essentially there's 6 stations there. So it's a bit impractical. But yeah, I expect it probably will go to Gfinity because they're really they've got the money, they've got the talent on board. EGL are obviously quite established in Europe, and they've run some good events and they've really helped support the scene. But I'm not sure if Activision would go with them over the production quality that Gfinity have, the sort of talent that Gfinity have. So
yeah.
I would expect it probably will go to Gfinity, but I'm just interested to see when it's announced and how exactly it leads into the league and how the seedings are done and whether it will just be one event. Because if so, that's going to be an absolutely huge event in terms of.
It will be if there's only one event for sure.
Exactly.
And also, okay, so Australia, I think ACL. I mean, they're partnered with ESL as well, anyway. So I'm pretty sure that's a no question. But so this challenger division.
I mean, ESL could run it. I guess they could run their own event.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, they could do that. So the challenge division, okay, so we don't really know how it is, but you're saying maybe a one event, one and done kind of thing. No,
it's not going to be more than 2, is it? It's not going to be more than 2 live events.
Yeah, and it would be cool if there was some sort of online component to it, but I feel like at this point, I just feel like it's not possible because, I mean, we knew kind of the schedule for the Call of Duty World League Pro Division a month ago is when the qualification tournaments were being played. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, at this point, it seems too late for there to be some sort of league for it. If there is a LAN event, I
think there's definitely not a league. There might be online tournaments, though. I wouldn't be that surprised if there were online tournaments to go with it.
Yeah.
I would guess then there's the LAN has more seeding points than the online tournaments. That's just how it works. Mm-hmm. So it's just a booster essentially for your seeding points, the online tournaments. But no, it'll be interesting, and I think we're going to see. There's a roster that seems to be forming in Europe, which is Dave, Watson, Sunny B, and Desire, which are going to be nipping at the heels of all those bottom teams in Europe in the league. Who I think they'll probably beat they'll beat Pulse, they'll beat probably Giants. So all of these teams that are in the league are going to have to be working really hard not to be in those bottom spots, because I assume how it works is the bottom team in the league plays the top seeded team from the challenge events. That would be my assumption on how it would work.
Yeah, that would be fair.
I think that's how it works in how it works in League of Legends is you get to pick the lowest team in the the LCS doesn't get a choice. The highest team that's in the playoffs, so it's like the 7th place team, isn't it, or 8th place team? Yeah, there's three relegation slots, I think. But anyway, you get the point. Essentially, if you're higher in the league, you get preference on who you play to get just in the relegation matches.
Basically,
yeah.
Basic seeding.
So they're going to really want to avoid being in the bottom spot, because I think that team's going to be really, really strong.
Yeah. It's
because obviously Watson did qualify with Epsilon, and because of it was quoted to be work ethic, he did get dropped in the end in favour of first Hawkeye and then Rudy. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think the European League going forward is really interesting, especially with Vitality turning up and adding an extra factor, and XL looking so strong. I haven't really spoke about them at all.
Yeah, they're looking good too.
Mentioned their dominating victory against Pulse, which I think everyone's expected. I don't think anyone expected Pulse. But the thing is, XL are known as kind of the online god squad. I think it's fair to say. Brain and Nolson in Advanced Warfare had really, really good online results. They were in the Pro League. But then at both the open lands later in the year, they placed top 12. Slightly disappointing. And then we've got obviously Zed, he's been with XL, the organisation, for a long time. And Quicker coming in, he's got a YouTube channel, Quicker than you. But also he was on Infused at the GFIN Summer Championships. I think they beat Elevate at that event, I think. And they got top 4. So like reasonably known players, and online at least, I think I've seen a lot of people tweeting about it, like a lot of the top players rated. For one, Reedy was talking about them and saying that XL online, for whatever reason, whether they're warriors or they're just more comfortable playing at home, or they just haven't had the luck at LAN, because obviously it's like a lot of the sort of on the day thing at LAN. Sometimes you just won't turn up. But XL could well be a top 4 or top 3 team in the league, in the online component, definitely. And they looked like it, to be honest, in their games. Zed absolutely demolished Pulse. I think he was like triple positive over the whole series. It was ridiculous. Double digits on S&D, I think. I think he dropped like 45 and 12 or something on the hard point. Mm-hmm. Like absolutely dirty numbers, to be honest. And Quicker really stepped up as well in the Splice game, which they managed to take 3-1. They got beaten on the S&D. I think it's fair to say it's probably their weakest game mode, XL's, and Splice's strongest. But no, XL look good, and I think they're going to be a challenge for even the top teams, the likes of Millennium, Infused, and Epsilon. They can definitely get taken down, and even Vitality. I would say all the teams at the moment, I think, are looking at XL and thinking these guys can upset us.
Yeah.
And I think they potentially have. They could even get top 2, to be honest. If results go their way, XL could be top 2 in the online like the online portion of the league. Yeah, I think I've covered all the teams now.
All the European teams. Yeah, I think I agree with you about.
Avoid listening to me.
But
you can avoid listening to me now. I'd just like to point out that my rankings were pretty accurate as well.
Yeah.
With the exception of Millennium, which I think everyone expected.
Yeah, I think that Excel does look good. I mean, they beat Pulse and they beat Splice, and I think Splice has a good chance to be kind of right in the middle, at least.
Yeah, they are definitely a mid-tier team, probably 5th, 6th, maybe 7th if they have a few poor games, but they're definitely at that sort of level, and XL looked relatively comfortable against them. They absolutely, again, I sound like a broken record, but they really did destroy them in the hard point. I think that was another 100-point club by XL. It was evac hard point. They let the Vesper through, and that was basically it. That absolutely took them apart. And obviously Splice are a new team, and XL as a roster have been together for a long time. I think I'm not sure if they've been together longer than Vitality, but they're one of the rosters that have stayed together for the longest. So I don't know, we'll see, I guess.
Okay, so the last thing we have to cover really is the North American teams. There are 4 undefeated teams currently. There's Optic Gaming, that's pretty much expected. There's FaZe, pretty much expected. Team Envious, that's also pretty much expected. And then there is H2K, who didn't really play the best teams in the league, but they still won. They actually yesterday, on the second day, they came back against CLG. So CLG was up 2-0, and H2K made this amazing reverse sweep comeback. It's pretty
Yeah, I
fun to
watched that
watch.
game actually.
They did. Yeah, that was a pretty good
The
one to
thing,
watch.
thing that surprised me was H2K losing that first S&D and still coming back, because
Yeah,
obviously we think of FizzUp
being the S&D gods pretty
and
much.
Crew
Yeah.
as really, really good at S&D, so I kind of thought it was almost over when they were first lost that first S&D, but yeah, managing to come back in the end, it's a pretty intense game. And to be honest, the NA side of the league has produced some really, really good games, and I hope that it does continue that way, especially the games on the second day were really, really of a high quality, quite consistently. I think we saw quite a few game fives. How many did we see?
Yeah,
Like
there
three
were
or four?
I think three. Yeah, three went to game fives. It's definitely good. It's always good to see that good contest because you don't want to see blowouts all the time. It's not fun to have one team be way better than all the other ones. And
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
past, it's kind of been Optic, been just destroying everybody. But Elevate yesterday took them to game five.
Yeah, Optic looks really a bit shaky, I think, compared to maybe what some people expected. I don't think many
Yeah.
people expected to go to game five with Elevate. Obviously, Elevate are a really, really strong squad, and
Yeah.
don't think many people would deny that. But going last round, and it was round 11, right?
I don't know. I didn't get to watch the very end, so I didn't catch that.
God, it finally comes out. No, it did. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I know it went like round 11, and it ended up with Karma using his heat wave, and that was it basically.
I mean,
It was a bit of a
Elevate is
whitewash in
definitely
the
good.
final round, but yeah, it was a really, really close game.
It's unfortunate that Elevate's 0-2.
Yeah.
I mean, they forfeited the first match, so who knows? It could have gone another way. They could be 1-1. They could have beat Optic. So Optic is, this year, Optic's beatable. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Um,
And I think basically seeing the same thing as in Europe, where that sort of top team that everyone expected to be quite dominant going forward have slipped up quite early. Obviously, Optic not quite losing the game, but they've looked beatable, and I think that's only good for the league and for the competition and for the viewers. The fact that these top teams do look beatable means that we're probably going to have a bit more of an exciting league than just someone absolutely face rolling over the whole opposition and just seeing them on like a ridiculous score at the top of the league.
and actually, you know what? I was wrong about one of these teams being undefeated. I'm just looking at that now. Team Envious is actually, they lost a game 5 to Complexity yesterday. And I think it threw me off because this CWL score sheet was never updated. They took so long. So I mean, it's updated now with scores and all that, but yesterday it wasn't at all. So
Oh no, I'm pretty sure Envy beat Complexity.
is it right? Because I mean,
I think I think it's wrong. I think they put it up. I can see it now. No, I think that's wrong.
you're right.
I'm pretty-
COD Esportspedia has it the opposite.
Yeah.
They have 0-2 for
Okay.
Complexity, Team Envious 2 now. So which ones? They
Yeah,
have
Envious-
the entire
Envious won.
scoreboards. So
No, Envious definitely won. I definitely watched that one, especially because I was in a call with one of my quite close friends in Call of Duty, and he had €90 on Complexity.
Okay.
So I definitely knew at the end that Complexity had lost.
okay. But it did go to a game 5.
It did go to a game 5, and it was very close.
Okay.
I think it ended up like 6-4 the S&D
Yeah.
or something.
COD Esportspedia is awesome. They do a really good job. Yeah, and they have it listed as NV3 too.
Yeah, but
Okay.
no, it was a close game, and I know a lot of people have been saying that Complexity in scrims against Envy were looking really, really like the stronger team.
Yeah.
But I think it just goes to show that doesn't always mean a lot scrims, and we've seen Envy come out on top, and it's nice to see that roster doing well. I think that Envious roster,
Yeah.
some real veterans in the scene, and I'd like to see
I really
Aches and
like
TP at the top again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they looked like the other day I was watching them play against their first match. Was against TK. They were so dominant. It was not even fair. TK
Yeah.
got destroyed by them pretty much. Envy, Envy. If I have to pick a favorite team in North America, I think it's gonna be them right now. Just a group of guys that they're all veterans for sure. Like I said, they've been around playing for a long time.
Yeah.
And super successful, except for last year. They just Teeps and Aches, TP and Aches, they weren't very successful in Advanced Warfare.
No, we saw obviously TP on Optic Nation doing quite poorly, and then later in the game, he was on Envy a bit as well, right?
Which player?
for a period. TP
The
was
very
on
end of the
Envy for a bit,
year, I
right?
think they were playing for them.
Yeah.
The very end of the year.
But yeah, no, they didn't reach the heights that they were at on Black Ops 2 and Ghosts, where obviously they did win the World Championship and looked really, really dominant at times. They were by far the best team in the world. So yeah, it's nice to see those guys back, and also just like
And
to talk
J-Cap.
about the rise. Did you watch? Yeah, JCap, yeah, of course, winning last year in the
Yeah.
champs.
So they have 3 COD champs on their team.
They do, yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
So the Rise games.
So,
You
but
said?
yeah,
I didn't watch those.
I hope that they continue it. Yeah, the Rise phase game. I don't know if you watched that. Did you watch any of these games?
I watched
That's
a
my
few of
question.
them. I watched a few of them. I just, I couldn't have time to watch every single one. I had a soccer last night.
No, it's
actually.
fine. It's fine.
There's a
It's
few
fine.
that I did.
I'll let you off. I'll just.
I watched actually.
I didn't. To be fair, I didn't watch that many of the NA games. I watched.
Sorry.
It's useful. We both watched a decent amount of the European games, and neither of us watched many of the NA games. So that's perfect, isn't it?
Well, I watched EU games while I was at work, and then I came home, and NA games were on until pretty late, so I was watching them. Most of the ones on day one, but they did have 2 streams going for the NA.
Yeah, they
games,
did. Yeah.
So you could really only watch. Well, I guess you have 2 screens, but
Yeah.
watch both at the same time.
But yeah, I don't know if you caught Rise versus FaZe. That was kind of hyped up as one of the biggest matches of the week, and it lived up to the hype, I think it's fair to say. It ended up in Game 5, Attach clutching out a 1v2 to take it for FaZe. A ridiculously close game, that one. Probably one of the best watches that I've seen over all the Week 1 games, and I watched probably... I don't even want to think about how many games I've watched, probably 15 or 16 games, so... yeah, that was one of my favourites, and it lived up to the hype, which is always nice. Sometimes we see be a bit of an anticlimax, but in the end, yeah, Attach with a 1v2. I think it was round 11. I'm a bit hazy. I'm kind of in a bit of a COD sort of stupor at this point.
Apparently it was around 11.
Yeah, so I remember incorrectly. Yeah, and 1v2. I think the bomb was down as well. So yeah, getting the 1v2. A massive play by FaZe, but FaZe again, I don't think any of the teams looked unsurmountable. They all looked like they had some cracks to sort of paste over in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think definitely all those top teams can beat each other. So we're not going to have an undefeated team for long, I don't think.
No, I think maybe if Optic really kind of work on their game and they get stronger and stronger going forward, maybe we could see them be as dominant as they were in points on Advanced Warfare, but I think it's unlikely. And I think, like you said, we will see teams drop games quite quickly going forward in the next few weeks, but you never know. I can't claim to be that much of an expert on North America. I like to pretend I'm an expert on Europe. Probably not really. But no, it'll be interesting going forward, especially Optic. I'm interested to see how they do going forward. I can't say I'm a big Optic fan or anything, so it's not really from that perspective, but just it's interesting to see how these teams transfer over onto games when they've been really dominant previously. Obviously, we did see a few blips with them being defeated by FaZe at some events and not doing so well at champs, but overall, I think pretty much everyone will agree that Advanced Warfare was Optic's season.
Definitely.
So it's just interesting to see how they're going to transfer over into this league going forward. And I'm just going to have a look what their fixtures are next week.
Yeah, they actually have some pretty good matches. So day 1 in North America, I think the 2 biggest matches are going to be FaZe Envy. That's the first one. That's huge. Both of them are still undefeated. They're some of the biggest organizations. I think they're definitely. I'll put them in my top 3 in my rankings this next week. So that's going to be huge. One of them is going to have to take a loss. And then Optic is actually playing Rise. And like you said, that Rise phase match, last map, round 11, that's huge. Because Rise is a really good team. They won that first tournament. I know it was only 1 week after the game came out. But Rise put together a team of really tough players. They have Looney, Octane, Classic, and Slacks. And all those guys, Octane is pretty new. I think he came out last year, but
Yeah,
He
he did. He
showed.
was on what Dream Team? They broke through at one of the events, wasn't it? One of the open events near the beginning of the year with Llama, right?
Yeah, Llama was on Dream Team at some point. Um,
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, carry on.
and then
Yeah,
Octane was pretty soon after that picked up by Pro Team for the leagues, right? MLG Pro leagues. He was playing
yeah.
for Envy a lot, right?
Mhm.
Um, but that was really strong. Like they didn't lose really. Like, they won the first tournament. They went undefeated in the LAN qualifiers. I mean, that's not that hard.
Mhm.
It's only a couple matches, but
Yeah.
they had a really tough first game. I think I would say it would be fun to see them beat Optic next week. I think that's definitely possible because they're definitely one of the stronger teams. Um, so it'd be nice to see Optic take a loss at the very beginning of the season.
Yeah, it's quite hard at the moment. I feel like with the amount of games being played, especially in North America, where it feels like all the top teams are really quite tightly grouped in terms of skill.
Yep.
It's quite hard for me to separate who's going to come out on top in the end, because I feel like there's like 4 or 5 teams that could, in
Yeah.
theory, be at the top of the league at the end of the season. Obviously, I think Optic are still probably favourites, but
Probably.
there's like you say, the Envies, FaZe, Rise. Even though they lost against FaZe, they could do something. Maybe Complexity, we saw them be reasonably strong against. Against who was it again? Sorry, I just lost it. Oh, Envy again. Envy in their game.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we could be in for some very interesting games going forward.
My my power rankings this week are gonna be tough to put together. Putting
Yeah.
them together in the right order, who knows how it's gonna go. I'll try my best not to make people mad, but I had Rise as number 1. I mean, there's no reason.
I
to have them
tactically, you tagged me in like the power rankings thing. I tactically did not retweet it because I feel like someone's going to see this and like abuse me if I get this wrong. So maybe I'll retweet it now after the game's happened.
Well, we're
But
gonna update them.
Yeah, no, I just kind of felt like holding off for a bit without any games being played before, because if I was completely wrong, I wouldn't be able to live it down, I don't think.
No, that's okay, because we don't have a huge European following yet. We have a lot more people from North America that follow the site, so I don't think there's enough people to have some sort of outcry at your rankings. And most of the time, actually looking at them right now, people pretty much upvoted all of your rankings, so I think they were like, oh yeah, this looks good. This looks pretty good. It's funny, looking at the power rankings, I had Rise as number 1, and a lot of people downvoted that. And pretty much everybody voted Optic. They were in the number 2 position. Everybody's like, oh, they should go.
Showed you.
I mean, that's fair enough. They're gonna drop next week, this coming week.
Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, the next week of Call of Duty World League is definitely pretty exciting. I think it's kind of cool. They're only doing it twice a week. It's literally all day long on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
It is a bit intense. So maybe I would
is.
prefer it if it wasn't all in one block, but
Yeah.
I understand why they've done it. They don't want to put it over weekends, and
Yeah.
it also allows teams to still attend events as well, which is quite nice.
That is true.
So we're not seeing it where teams can't attend events, because obviously Tuesday or Wednesday you've still got time to travel, not only there to the event and be there in reasonable time, even if it's a Friday start, but also travel back like on the Monday. So like I think all the Pro League teams, if they wanted to, obviously it would be a bit intense maybe if they're traveling to loads of events at the same time as doing the Pro League, but it's still available for teams, which is quite nice in all the regions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, having them on Tuesday and Wednesday, they had to be all day long because I mean, there's 3 different regions, so it's pretty much no other choice at that point.
Yeah.
But it's nice to tune in, and unfortunately, I mean, I guess you can stay up late to watch North America, and then you can.
I was up until 5 a.m. to watch the Dream Team game. But luckily, I haven't got any time commitments in the morning, so I did have quite a leisurely morning. So that was all right.
Unfortunately,
I didn't
for me,
lose out on too much sleep.
It's hard to watch the Australian. I mean, they start at 2 a.m. for me, and
Yeah.
this semester I have to teach at 8 a.m. 2 days a week, so it's kind of like gotta go to sleep for that. But I do want to watch them. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah, the Australian ones are a difficult time for me as well. They're kind of like, well, the thing is, if I want to watch the NA ones, they're a difficult time, because essentially I have to go to bed late for the NA ones. I'd have like 3 hours sleep or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, pick it up early too.
Yeah.
So so there's a couple other things we didn't talk about yet. Not Call of Duty World League related, but Call of Duty related a little bit. So Denial, I mentioned this earlier. Denial has a new co-owner. It's 402 Robert Bowling. So he was working for Infinity Ward, all the Modern Warfare games, which are kind of, those games were part of the reason why Call of Duty became more popular, because they were kind of groundbreaking at the time when they were first made. And now Infinity Ward's kind of dropped into the bottom of the list of Call of Duty developers. But I don't know, would you agree with that? Infinity Ward's kind of like the disliked version, the most disliked one.
Yeah, I'm not sure what people think about Sledgehammer either.
Yeah. I guess I think
Um,
Warfare had a good turnout at first, but then people kind of just were like, this sucks.
yeah, but no, I would say they probably are at the bottom of the heap at the moment, which I think is probably well earned, to be honest. But it's quite interesting how he's come back. The COD guys come back when they don't have a COD team.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, they do want a COD team. I mean, the
Yeah,
CEO of Denial, he actually I live in Columbus, by the way. He lives in
yeah.
Columbus too, I think, and he's always tweeting about getting a new COD team. And since you were saying, we were talking about team question mark earlier, it's a question mark of who they're going to be. Is it going to be TSM? Is it going to be Team Liquid? Is it going to be Denial? Don't really know. Is it going to be a Challenger League team that Denial picks up? It's unknown. Team Liquid, though, did you see there was kind of like this video with the owner of Team Liquid, and he said that they just signed a team.
Yeah, Steve, isn't he called or something?
Uh,
Isn't he called Liquid? I'm pretty sure he's called Liquid.
they
Like
call
that's
him
his
Liquid?
tag. His tag is Liquid because he was the owner of Curse, and then obviously they
And
merged.
they merged together. Yeah, I'm not sure if
Yeah,
he's.
like about it. I'm pretty sure he is called like Liquid 112 or something. I need to find out now. Okay,
Not
carry on
really
talking
sure.
while I find out.
But he did announce that they signed it, like literally a contract. So that hasn't been announced publicly yet for whatever reason. I'm not really sure. It could be Team question mark. That could be who's picking up
Yeah, it
that
could well
team.
be.
But Denial is also very probable because they've been involved in the scene. They won Call of Duty champs last year.
Yeah.
They I see you just posted the thing. Yeah, Liquid won one too. So I think I could put Denial as a probable team to sign them too. I'm not really.
The thing is, as well, if they don't come in for this stage one, because of how the points work for qualifying for champs, if you don't, it's kind of similar to LCS. I don't know if you know anything about League of Legends. I'm going to draw a few parallels since it's quite similar how the leagues are working. But essentially, it works where obviously you get points for your placement, the org's placement rather than the team members as individuals, org's placement in each of the stages, and then that contributes to whether you go to champs or not. So if you're not in stage one and you do pick up a challenger team like you're saying, then you have that disadvantage. You essentially
They're
got
losing out
half
on a bunch of
the
points.
yeah, you've got half the opportunity to get points.
Yeah.
So it becomes very, very difficult to qualify then for champs. So I think if any organisation are wanting to come in, they're going to want to come in stage one because champs is really huge, obviously.
Yeah, definitely the biggest tournament of the year. Yeah, so I think we'll definitely be finding out within this week who signs that team because that's the only unsigned team in the Call of Duty World League at the moment.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, in
kinda
any
weird that
region.
it's kind of weird that they don't have anybody, honestly. Very strange.
I would think it probably is sorted sort of behind closed doors,
Yeah.
but we just haven't found out yet. And probably they're going to be waiting for something. And we probably will never find out what they were waiting for. But
Yeah. Well, in that case, if it is sorted, then I would say Team Liquid is most likely since we heard that they have a contract with somebody.
Yeah.
And so that'd be big because if Team Liquid's in there, how many teams is that coming in? And that'll be in the Call of Duty World League that's new to Call of Duty. That would be, well, Complexity's not exactly new, but they're coming back after a year hiatus from Ghosts.
No, complexity isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, they're not new.
Yeah,
then you have
coming back.
Luminosity,
Luminosity, I think. Yeah.
Counter Logic Gaming, those two teams. And then
Yeah.
whoever picks up question mark. So that's three in North America.
And then H2K as well. H2K.
Oh, yeah, you're right. H2K. Sorry, I'm looking at my power rankings. They're not updated yet. So H2K. So that's possibly four teams that brand new to Call of Duty in the Call of Duty World League. I think it's
Yes, that's a third of the league. So.
yeah, that's pretty big. So there's another news that came out today, also. So the Optic book. I think was it ESPN that actually announced that? I know that it was in one of the ESPN
No, I
articles.
think no, I think Hex announced it
Okay, so they have a book,
from what I saw.
and what really surprised me about that, so it's gonna be basically the history of optic gaming. I'm sure Hex is basically gonna be one writing it almost, but there's the other authors are Nadeshot, Fwiz, Optic Midnights, Hex, and is it Flamesword? I think was maybe the last one.
I don't know.
I don't know. He probably hasn't been around long enough for that. Big timer,
Yeah, big time, yeah.
big timer. So yeah, the guys that have been in optic game for a long, long time are going to be basically providing all the information for this book. The thing that surprised me the most about this book, not that it was an esports book, we don't think we have very many of those, but the fact that the publishers are paying Optic already ahead of time, like several $1 million for the book deal.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they said each member has got six-figure forwards
Each
on.
member, holy wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, before the book's
but
even published yet, that's crazy.
yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't know if you like sort of follow the general news about sort of internet celebrities publishing books, but it's happened quite a lot. Obviously, we've seen PewDiePie's published a book, which is like quite heavily promoted in the UK. Like you hear it on the radio, him doing promos. Like Zoella, I don't know if you know who she is. She's like quite big in the UK doing makeup and stuff. Can't say I watch her videos myself,
Yeah.
unless I'm in a certain mood. But they've done really well commercially. Like all gone to #1 bestsellers, at least in the UK. Yeah.
Wow.
So I would guess they've kind of followed on that trend where they've seen people translate sort of online fame and repute to book sales, and they felt confident enough to offer them a book deal and give them that money up front. So it'll be interesting to see how well it does.
Yeah.
I don't know how well it'll do, but I do think it'll probably do all right.
I mean, they do have a huge fan base, so it would be
Yeah,
fair
exactly.
to
Especially
say
like that young. Yeah, especially the younger fan base, like the 12, 13-year-olds, like
Yeah.
getting their mum to buy it.
yeah, that's
I
it's
can
like a
definitely
good
see it saying well.
birthday present or Christmas gift or something. Hey, your favorite team, Optic Gaming. That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Because those kids aren't going to be the ones going out and buying them themselves. Like, first of all, a lot of kids don't just buy books. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But
No, it's the one for grandma to get you for Christmas. That's what it is.
yeah, you tell them, hey, Optic Game's my favorite team. Then yeah, that's something because that's very true. I mean, I might even buy it.
I think it will be interesting though,
As
to
an
be
esports
honest.
fan, I guess you're
Yeah,
kinda
yeah, I don't want to admit it, but I probably will pick it up
Yeah.
if it's sold in the UK at least.
Yeah,
I'm not
sure it will
not
be.
paying the horrendous shipping fees.
Oh, it's gotta be. It's gotta
Probably,
be sold in
yeah.
the UK. For such like a big publisher, it's gotta be shipped overseas.
What, Harpers, is that right?
What's that?
Is it HarperCollins, the publisher?
HarperCollins? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, no, it's a big publishing house.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how well it does. I don't know if it's really big esports news. I guess it is that people are interested in publishing stories.
I mean, in the terms of
But
like the amount
I
of
think
esports
it's
content,
more off the back of their YouTube and
Yeah. Because Optic Game is much more. They're so big off of esports. Like, all of them have like these big YouTube channels where, like, the fans probably don't even like really. A lot of those fans don't really follow esports. They follow the YouTube channels.
yeah, at least not day to day. They'll follow kind of like how well Optic are doing in the league, but they probably won't watch all their matches. They'll just kind of
Yeah.
see on Nadeshot's vlog or on Scumpy's videos how they're doing in the league, but they wouldn't necessarily watch sort of intensively every single week. Make sure
Yeah.
to watch Optic Gaming's.
But it is really funny
Optic
when Optic
Gaming's
has
matches.
a match, how the stream viewership just completely doubles every single time Optic's up. Like, all those kids, they come in, they're like, oh, Optic's playing right now, and then they leave because they don't know the other teams afterwards.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, that's kind of a failing of maybe the tournament organisers, maybe just the organisations and the players. But I feel like that could be combated to a certain extent, and I feel like Optic would also be happy to help that happen, because all that's going to do is benefit the scene. It's not it's better to have a small slice of a big pie than a big slice of a small pie, if that makes any sense. So it's within their interest to boost everything, and I feel like some of the other players have tried to do that, boost their YouTube and just like it
I
feels
feel.
like the stories in Call of Duty esports aren't covered as well as maybe they should be. Because like
Yeah,
the reason that Optic are so popular is because they kind of lay their life out there. If that makes any sense, people feel like they're almost friends with them,
yeah, that's
and
true.
they followed
I
them.
mean,
They
they do the
followed their
day in
stories.
the life. I mean, yeah, you get to like live their life from their point of view, pretty much. So it's true.
Exactly. It feels like to a certain extent some other teams and players are missing that trick. And the thing is, it doesn't necessarily need to be the players. If say the organisations were producing sort of high quality content, covering their team like YouTube content, then potentially that could help fan bases, especially as we've seen it obviously work with Optic, and it's likely that the Optic fans, if they see the Envy team or they see the FaZe team doing that as well, then they'll kind of cross pollinate. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's
Well,
interesting.
FaZe. I mean, FaZe is big on YouTube, but it's not really the esports guys that are big.
Exactly. Like
But I mean,
Sense
they still
obviously
have
is
a
basically
following.
transferred completely over.
Yeah, and well, the other team that is doing YouTube, I think, pretty well, and they have a team house, Team Caliber. They have a
Yeah,
pretty good
no, that's
following
true.
fan
Yeah,
base too, actually. And even though they've never really
but the
been
thing
like a
is,
top team, they have this fan base.
yeah, it's a bit of a special case TK as well because obviously Chaos X Silencer owns TK, right?
Say that
And
again?
Kozduff,
Yeah,
like Chaos X Silencer and Kozduff own TK, right?
yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah, and they're YouTubers essentially. Or at
yeah,
least
yeah.
Chaos X Silencer started off as a YouTuber who then picks up a.
And Karlsdorf does a lot of YouTube too.
So kind of they understand how that works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
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 it would be
since
nice to see more of the teams go forward and do that.
so like, I guess is that the way to grow an esports team, at least in Call of Duty, is to kind of become big on YouTube as well. I mean that's not a bad thing, but it seems I don't know. It seems kind of like the opposite direction as it should be. It's kind of like you should have like a following of your competitive team, and then that should translate to kind of maybe doing well on YouTube afterwards because they're fans of you. But I guess you have to gain fans first. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might be less of an issue with the league structure now, how it is, where they'll be covering the storylines and they'll be engaging people on that day-to-day basis. So potentially we won't need that anymore. But it feels like that's the reason why Optic have got to this stage.
yeah,
Because, and obviously, Optic had that huge background in trick shotting, and
yeah,
they had
and it's
they
still
had that
big.
that benefit.
The trick shotting
Exactly, but they
community,
did.
not for Optic, but for other teams.
Yeah,
Or
they did build on it,
launch.
obviously, and it's just been nice to see some other teams do similar things. And maybe I'm just not seeing it. Maybe they're just not promoting it as well as maybe they should, and I've just been missing out completely. But it just feels like the Optic book deal kind of highlights where you can get if you play your social media right. And I've seen other esports, like a journalist, talk about Call of Duty as the social media esport, and I think
Yeah,
that's fair to say. And I think people should play to the strengths of Call of Duty, which at the moment is that big social media following. Like even the players who don't produce a lot of content and aren't necessarily big personalities have big social media followings on Twitter.
yeah,
So I think just exploiting that and making sure that we make best use of the fact that so many of these Call of Duty esports fans are using Twitter, interacting with people, would really sort of give it an edge compared to other esports and help move Call of Duty to the next level. But I mean, it's all speculation. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't have the answer.
but the
It's going to
problem
solve
is,
everything. But
I mean, Twitter followers they don't really translate until to like Twitch views, like stream views. It's like if you want to build your streaming channel, or you want to invite people to come watch your league matches. I don't know. It doesn't seem like Twitch converts that way unless there's like a lot of people that are tweeting it out. Like just the player themselves. I think that
no, I agree with streams and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is, if they use the Twitter followers
yeah,
to boost other social media like YouTube or whatever,
yeah, yeah.
or even if they keep plugging away with Twitch, then in time that will grow.
In time.
And I think that's what you got to understand. Like I feel like a lot of these players, they'll make YouTube videos for a bit and then just feel like there's not enough growth coming,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
they'll
we talked about
quit.
that last week a little bit. Yeah, they start it for like a week, and then they stop because they don't see growth. I mean, a week is too short of a time to make that
Yeah,
decision. And that's like, I don't know, every single person that's gotten big on YouTube wasn't an instant star. So I think that yeah, you're right. They got to kind of stick with it for a little bit longer if they want to see something come out of it. And there's such potential there because they already do have that big Twitter following, um, and they have other players that are basically shouting them out all the time, talking to them on social media, so everybody can see that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that if there were more players that were dedicated to growing their YouTube channels, that for sure would be they would see a difference. I think, and that's obviously where Optic has done their best. You know, they were successful in that. I mean, they bring somebody to Optic and they keep them there. It's pretty much because they've been doing well on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I think it's getting pretty late for you, but there's one last thing, I guess. There's the ESPN. ESPN eSports was announced today, and there was kind of some hints at it last week when somebody found the Twitter handle was made. They didn't really have any tweets at that point, but ESPN eSports opened up, and they have, I think they only announced like 3 dedicated writers, but they're full-time writers.
Yeah.
Um, let me just see. There was Slasher. It was, I don't know how do you say it, Fion on Fire.
Yeah.
That
Fion on Fire.
Yeah. And then the one other guy, I think was he the guy that was working with Azubu? I
But
don't
who?
know his name.
Fion.
Fion was working with the Score. Slasher was working with the
Yeah.
Score. And was it Darren?
Don't know the name.
Yeah, I don't know his last name. I'm looking at his Twitter handle right now. It doesn't have his last name on there. I think he was working with the Azubu previously. But now
Sure.
he's general editor at ESPN Esports. But they've only announced like three writers.
Yeah.
I mean, they're full time, so I mean, obviously they can do like multiple articles every single day. But what do you think about that? Like, do you think they're gonna pretty much give League of Legends a ton of attention and kind of ignore everything else, or do you think they're gonna try to cover all the esports a little bit?
I think it's interesting, and I think that potentially it could lead to growth. But I think we need to understand that it doesn't necessarily mean instant growth. It doesn't necessarily mean instant recognition.
Yeah.
It is nice to have, and I'm glad to see kind of more mainstream bodies coming in and supporting. But you have to understand, like, there's a lot of other niche sports that are covered by ESPN, and they're not like global sensations now. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like,
so,
just looking at their website, like they cover horse racing.
Yeah.
Like I know there's like money in horse racing, but it's not like it. People are saying like this like ESPN picking it up means it's going to be like the next football.
that's actually a really good point. There's just the fact that ESPN is covering it doesn't mean it's gonna. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not gonna grow. Like, I'm not gonna go on ESPN and see horse racing and then become a horse racing fan.
Yeah.
It's just like not gonna happen. I'm looking at their main page. Oh, okay. So if you click the ... I think
Yeah,
updated
exactly.
this.
So
Esports is at the top there now, but
yeah.
I think they just updated that because all these other things weren't showing up in there before.
But yeah, essentially what I'm saying is it's nice, and it's nice to see those people come in. But I think maybe people are slightly overplaying it, especially with the amount of writers they've got at the moment. Time will tell. If they've got really, really high quality content coming out consistently, it's always nice. But I feel like we're not lacking, at least in the esports that they're going to cover, we're not lacking like reasonable journalism, particularly compared to the size and of the audience that we've got. If they're just kind of doing mainstream stuff, because obviously we've got the, like, say for League of Legends, we've got Riot doing their own stuff.
Yeah.
And then we've got all like those freelance writers that are writing stuff about it. And compared to, say, like, because the thing is, they're not bringing in new writers either. So like Slasher was writing stuff anyway, like Fion especially was writing a lot anyway.
Yeah.
So all they've done is just transferred the website that they're writing on.
Yeah, so they're not the Score anymore, so the Score's kind of at a loss. But
yeah. But I'm saying there's no net gain, if that makes any sense, for the amount of high quality articles coming out. It's just a different platform.
Well,
and
were Slasher and Fion, were they full time at the
Fion at least was writing a lot of articles, I know. I think Slasher maybe less so, but Theon, I think I follow him. Not 100% sure, but anyway, you see a lot of articles from him around, so I'm not sure if we're going to see like a massive net gain in terms of the amount of high quality articles we're having, because it's not like Slasher and Theon are going to go to ESPN and suddenly their writing style's 70 times better and they're geniuses with wordsmithery. So it's nice to have ESPN in, and I'm glad, and I think it will help the scene, but I think time will tell whether it's going to make much of a difference and how much they're going to promote it. If it's on the front page a lot, if they're actively promoting it a lot, then yes, probably we will see more growth. But at the moment, it seems like
it's just it's going to be for the already esports fans, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice to have, but it feels like more like ESPN are trying to grow themselves by having an esports section rather than ESPN are trying to grow esports, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that for sure. Because the one thing that I do have a lot of is haters. If that's the right word to say. Like a lot of people, they see that ESPN's covering esports, and there's one tweet that I saw earlier. I don't even know how this guy found the ESPN esports Twitter handle, but he said, "Using a mouse and keyboard isn't a sports, guys." Laugh out loud. I mean, they're going to have those kinds of people that are noticing it and just kind of bashing it. But the thing with the writers, the few writers I mentioned on Reddit earlier, I commented on it. I said something about, I wonder how...
Oh, no, you didn't venture on Reddit, did you?
Do you go on eSports Reddit?
Yeah, I do go on Reddit a lot. I just sometimes, some of the things that I said on like the Call of Duty competitive stuff.
Well, the eSports Reddit is a little bit more mature.
Yeah.
So I commented on there. I said, I don't know how 3 writers is going to do the job, and is League of Legends going to have the most coverage? I mean, they probably are, but somebody said they've already employed several traditional ESPN staff writers as well as freelance endemic writers to supplement Theon and Slasher's content.
Yeah.
So, I guess they do have help then. So it's not all on their shoulders. They have some other professional writers kind of there to help them along. So I think they have a chance. Like, I just don't know how much content they could possibly put out as such a small team. But because I mean, I know at my website, I don't know, we have no one's full time obviously, so you know you can't put out tons of content either. But it's just NFL, for example, has so much stuff every single day. You know, you're never lacking for those traditional sports.
And the thing is, as well, I think we've got to think about the fact that with the demographics we're talking about, I'm not sure how much of a market there is really for written content.
It's true. That's how I've always kind of wondered.
I know it's there.
Yeah, and well, the demographic of that younger, like everybody's on YouTube.
Yeah,
the kids
especially,
read articles, you know, on esports.
Yeah, exactly. People would rather watch a video and as that's been said by numerous people, and you can tell by the kind of the growth of those like news style YouTube channels relating to like Call of Duty, like, you know, T Martin and Drifter and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're
doing it all by video, by a video medium rather than by written, and it's working well. And I know it's slightly different demographics with kind of the casual players to the esports players.
Yeah, the more serious people don't really seem to use YouTube so as much, I feel like.
No, and I don't know. I think the ESPN thing's nice, and I think if they really, really invest in it and they're putting out good content, and I think they probably will put out video content as well. I'm assuming they're putting out video content as well.
Yeah, I think they probably will. I think, let me see their page. There were videos on here. I don't know who, though, made these videos.
Yeah, they are putting out video content, so that's good. But yeah, and also the fact that I'm not sure how many of the ESPN readers are then going to be interested in esports as a concept.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much. I feel like the market for esports, the growth of esports is almost within gamers who don't currently play competitive gaming, rather than sports people who are looking for a new competitive scene to follow, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
So obviously we're talking about ESPN, who are got a core sports audience, and I think there is room for growth from that sports audience, but it's not as big as just the growth from these casual gamers. And I know some of the people who are the sports audience were the casual gamers as well, but I'm just saying it's not a pure audience that is going to be able to extract. Not everyone who goes on ESPN is going to be interested in esports,
No.
and I don't think even close to everyone who goes on ESPN will be interested in esports. So
I
it'll just
think
be interesting to see.
their interest will be to kind of to their question is like, how is this even on ESPN? Is what they're probably going to be interested in. Is if they're gonna explore it at all, they're going to be like, what is this?
Yeah.
They might not become a fan. They might just dismiss it. I think a lot of people already have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I understand what darts is. Doesn't mean I'm going to be watching it anytime soon.
That's very true. I don't think I'll become a darts fan.
It's on TV in the UK on the main channels.
Really? Wow.
Yes, it is. It's quite big in the UK, but I think that's because we're actually quite good at it, and that's quite rare for a sport.
Nice. It's a pub game. It's like
it is. They're like all fat middle-aged men who win.
I mean,
like slightly balding.
That's also bowling and golf and.
It's much worse than that. Trust me.
Oh, really?
They look like the sort of people who would like.
Are they drinking beers while they're playing darts?
Probably.
Could be.
Probably.
I had no idea that would be on TV.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's interesting how ESPN will work, but I don't think it will make a massive difference short term. If they continue to be invested in it and they keep pushing it, then I think it's a nice thing. And I think, again, it's nice as a sign for the industry, if that makes any sense.
As a sign for the industry, yeah. That's why I think a lot of people were so excited, was because it's kind of like another, a big name is noticing us. I mean, 2016 for esports has so much potential for growth. It's crazy. I mean, I'm glad that we're part of it already before it begins, because there's a lot of big names coming in. We have the E-League that's going to be on TV pretty soon for CSGO. We have all these big name organizations with more, they're covering more esports now. So there's not just like those, I mean, there's still the more popular esports, but all the smaller guys are still growing.
Yeah.
Right. And so everybody's still growing pretty much. I mean, that's definitely going to be exciting to see what happens. Like, what's it going to be like next year when we're talking about it? What big changes will we be talking about by that time?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I just hope that it's a sustained growth, and we're not just seeing kind of like a lot of people bandwagoning, if that makes any sense. And if say the E-League isn't that successful, I hope that doesn't then sort of put off other big sort of moves into esports, and say if ESPN don't get any traction on their esports coverage, that it then gets rolled back, and then we don't see any more investment. The thing is, especially with the E-League, I don't know how much it makes sense putting esports on TV. But yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of growth at the moment. I just hope that it's sustainable growth, and it won't see like I've seen like a lot of the the really old esports personalities, not in terms of age, but the ones who've been around like since day one, really day one.
Yeah.
Like the likes of Red Eye, Paul Challenger.
I don't.
He hosts for a lot of like the CS:GO events and various other events, like, and Thorin again, who people have been around for a long time and talking about the CGS like crash after it. Mm-hmm. I doubt we'll see something to that scale, but essentially what happened was there was a lot of investment came in from TV company, from DirecTV, and it led to like a lot of growth. And then that didn't work out as well as they thought it would, and it just ended up being like a massive crash afterwards, if that makes any sense. So kind of like they saw that it wasn't working, they pulled out, and then everyone else pulled out because it didn't make sense anymore.
I wasn't actually involved as much in esports until a couple of years ago, so you probably know a lot more about the early, more beginnings, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I know about that is just kind of if you watch like the odd podcast or you watch people talk about things, like that's why I find value from listening to people like Thorin and Paul Challenger and even Richard Lewis. People who've been around for some time and have seen before kind of this stage of growth. Obviously, it wasn't as big as it is now, and the growth wasn't as big as it is now, but have seen kind of it go in that pendulum motion where it's kind of looks like it's going really forward, then it goes back a bit.
So,
So it's just interesting.
You don't see another backwards push then.
Yeah, and the thing is, it seems to be there's so much like this rhetoric about esports is the next big thing. Esports is going to take over the world, and I feel like people do get carried away with it a bit sometimes. I think we've got to accept that it's still a niche thing.
Yeah, and it's still like actually, I mean, we're involved in it, so we see pretty much all of it, right?
Yeah.
And you're right, it's really not as big as I think some people make it out to be yet, because it's a couple million viewers for the League of Legends finals. People will, like, you have a couple million viewers for just like, I don't know, football games, particular matchups in regular season, usually I think sometimes. So,
I mean, you have 2 million concurrent viewers for like repeats of Ramsey's Kitchen Nightmares, like.
Cooking show.
We're getting there, but I think you just kind of have to sway away from the kind of the really, really kind of like we're the next big thing, accept us or we're gonna crush you. Like move away football. We're here now. Don't need you anymore.
No, it's definitely not that, because I mean esports as a whole is still like, you know, all of them combined. I don't know if they're even as big as some like the Premier League or the NFL, you know, I don't know if it's as big as either.
Not even close.
Yeah, if you combine everything together, so.
Well, you know, like say in the Premier League, the grounds like at average probably 40,000 people in each one, and on any given day there can be 7 games going on.
Yeah.
So that's just live people actually at the grounds paying to watch.
Yeah.
You're talking about like 280,000 people. And then online people are streaming it, people are watching TV. Like at any one time there's like 4 million people watching just a standard day of the English Premier League. Probably more, way more probably.
How many people fit in the Ohio State Buckeye Stadium? Do you want to guess?
It's like 100,000, isn't it?
Broke the record this year. Last year for the one game Virginia Tech was like 105,000. I think it hit 107,000 this year.
They're actually ridiculously big, some of the stadiums you have in the US.
In one stadium, yeah. Well, that's one of the biggest, but that's insane, that number of people.
Yeah, so I think esports is in a growth period. Obviously, I think this goes without saying.
I mean, we definitely. But I just think
if
you look at like percentage of growth, I mean, we can see it's definitely grown a lot. But on the large scale things, like you're saying, it's definitely not yet anywhere close.
And the thing is, like, if you look at, especially like stuff like that's like tier 2 esports, like the EU Pro League, say for the Call of Duty. There's players who are on like ridiculously low salaries in the EU Pro League. I know.
Just some of them, like I feel like some of them might not even have a salary.
I think everyone is salaried. I know some of the salaries. I was still going to say, but
okay. I mean, a year ago, I don't know if that would be possible to say.
No, definitely not. So obviously we've seen growth, but it's still like it's not that big.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it full time if you were in like a lower tier team. I think it's fair to say like Millennium and Vitality are probably the only teams in Europe at the moment earning a good living off Call of Duty esports.
What would you? Do you know what their salaries are? Or would you have a?
I don't know Millennium and Vitality's, but I would guess Vitality is on probably €3,000 each a month.
That's really good because so I'm not 100% sure my source is accurate, but for the Team Envious, they got salaries, and Hastro tweeted out, you know, he said it was like one of the best ones in Call of Duty, and the number that I heard was about $2,500 a month.
Yeah. The thing is, like, you have to understand how big the Vitality players are.
Yeah.
Like within France, and the thing is, because it's quite a focused market. Like with Envious, they're kind of pulling from all these different places, whereas almost all the Vitality fans are French. So like they can approach these French sponsors, and like they know it's targeted only to the audience, if that makes any sense.
It seems so
And
weird. Like I know French has a huge Call of Duty scene, but it seems so weird because they're so separated from everybody else.
yeah, the thing is, I've spoken to various people about this, and I feel like it's just the language barrier.
It's, yeah.
Um, es- Especially like in France, English speaking is quite prevalent, but fluent English speaking is not incredibly prevalent. Like it's not as prevalent as in say the Netherlands
Hmm.
or even Germany, I wouldn't say. And we've seen the French teams be kind of semi-competitive, so they've got a reason to follow them. But they're segregated from the American scene. Like that's the reason that I feel like it's bigger than the UK scene, despite the UK teams doing better
Hmm.
and having like a similar-ish population to the UK and France. Is the fact that the French supporters, they can't kind of go onto Nade Shot's channel and really enjoy his videos, or they can't watch an NA stream and kind of understand everything that's going on.
Yeah.
So they've got that disconnect from the players because of the language barrier.
Hmm.
Whereas obviously they watch Gotaga's video, it's in their native language, it's what they understand, the culture's the same.
Yeah, and I had no idea that he was so big.
Yeah, Gotaga's huge.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw Visca Barca for Fabi, who didn't qualify for the league in the end. He's got 700,000 subscribers. And when Fabi were playing, that's when the EU qualifier stream went up to 70,000 viewers, because he made a video about him playing in the game, right? And within an hour, it had 40,000 views on his channel.
I remember watching even like not even Europe wasn't even playing, and there were a lot of is Fabi
Yeah.
called? Yeah, they had a lot of fans in the chat when
Yeah, so
North
it's just
America was
it's the
playing, too.
power of those YouTubers,
Yeah.
really, that I think that you just kind of see it there. Like that's the reason that for the EU LAN qualifier the viewership was so high, was because of Visca Barca and because of Gotaga, and it was just insane. And the amount of German teams that we saw in the qualifier was just way higher than anyone expected. The amount of German viewers on the stream were just astronomical. And it's just you could see how much difference it can make if one influential personality comes in, and how dedicated those people are. That's obviously we saw a similar thing with Nade Shot. Luckily, it's gone to the point where obviously other like Scump has also got that viewership now, so it's kind of spread around slightly.
Hmm.
But when you've got something that's like a smaller scene like France, it's still really, really focused, and people are really fanatical about Vitality, to be honest. And they're by far the biggest team. So yeah, they're on pretty decent salaries. I think I might be slightly overestimating on 3,000, but it's definitely going to be over 1.5 or 2, I would guess.
And that's
And
definitely
Millennium, I would guess, are on similar-ish, maybe slightly less, but similar-ish. But they're on healthy salaries.
yeah.
But then you look at the other part of the EU Pro League, and I would guess some of the teams are on like $200 or $300 a month.
Yeah,
like,
just to
it's
buy some
it's
food.
like the disparity is huge. And that possibly will improve as people get out of contract and they can look around and shop around, because that's the thing that the now TCM lineup did, was that they purposely didn't join an org until they'd qualified. They were one of the only teams that had the foresight to do that, and I would guess they've got a really good offer from TCM now, because they had the bargaining power at that point. They were the only team in Europe kind of available. So they're probably on better salaries than most of the other teams in the league. But yeah, I think we're still not at the stage where these like top esports pros are earning that much.
Yeah.
Again, you see the same thing in like EU LCS. They say like a lot of the players are on like $40,000 or $50,000 a year,
Yeah.
which might sound reasonable, but if you look at the viewership and the amount of hype that goes on around like the game,
Yeah.
it's not that high, is it? That's like a lower middle management job.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? For the creme de la creme.
yeah, well, that's their salary, but then they also, I mean, to be fair, they can also have winnings from tournaments and stuff too.
Yeah, but
But
there aren't. I don't think
they're
there
not
are that many millions in LCS, because they get
Yeah.
paid obviously like that's including the Riot salary. and then it's just like if
Oh,
you're,
it's
if you
including the
get,
right salary.
yeah, that's including the right salary. I'm
Oh,
saying
okay.
that's like a total income.
I gotcha. Yeah, it's livable. You're right. But it's not. It's not top tier. But they do have like travel and stuff like that paid for them. But
Yeah,
it's
but yeah, I don't know. I think ESPN, going back to ESPN, it's nice to see them come in. If they promote it really well, it could be really great. I think it depends on that, but I don't think it's a massive, super massive deal. It esports is not officially a sport yet. Um, we're not going to see it in the
I'm
Olympics
fine with
next.
calling it esports. No problem at all with that.
Yeah, we won't be seeing it in Rio at the Olympics this year. Um, don't get ahead of yourself. That's basically my opinion on it.
All right. All right. So I think we're gonna have to. That was a very long stream, actually. All right. So
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. We covered a lot of topics. Got the whole first week of CWL and a couple of other big topics that came out today. Definitely good to have you on here. So thank you for joining us. And I
Thank
know we
you.
kept you up really late, so you should probably
It's
try to
fine.
get some sleep. But maybe next time we can bring you on the weekend. We stream every once in a while. It'll be like midday for us, so a little
Yeah,
bit
that would work for me.
evening time for you. All right, so thank you for watching this stream, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you, Phil, for joining us. So catch you next week.